GSL Educational Society presents our new initiative, Medula, through which we bring you some inspiring stories and golden words said by some amazing people who excel in their profession. I'm glad to welcome you to our today's episode of Medula.
Good morning, everyone. So amongst us, we have an amazing pioneer, Mr. Sanjay Viswanathan, who is a chairman of AdiGroup. So we welcome you to this platform.
Thank you.
So my first question to you is that, can you please share your journey from being just a student to becoming a chairman of AdiGroup? And can you also please share your 3 major learnings?
Well, I think the journey would not be complete if one didn't make mistakes, right? So I'd say that every time I made a mistake with either a decision or a purpose or an activity, I think I learned so much more from it. So I would say that that's one of the biggest learnings that we've got, is to fail, but fail fast so that we don't make the same mistakes again, right? So that's one. The second big thing about the journey has been to take risks, because as an entrepreneur, one of the things you learn every morning when you wake up is no 2 days are going to be the same. And the only way that you can really grow is if you're able to put the risk or the failure of risk that you had the previous day behind, so that you can try new risks, each day. So that's the second big thing in the journey. And I think the third big thing in the journey is to surround yourself with people who are better than yourself, because a lot of entrepreneurs don't grow because they believe that they are the reason why that entity exists. But actually, no, it's because of the people around. So in fact, the ones that have grown are the ones that actually have great people working for them. So I'd say these are the 3 big things that I've learned through my journey that took me from being, growing up in a very middle class family in India to now running a global conglomerate out of London and based out of 19 cities in the world.
So you're leader of such a huge company of this country. So what are your future plans for AdiGroup? You have mentioned that you'll be investing your energy and the money in transport, education, and the medicine. So can you please enlighten us a little bit about it?
Sure. So the first phase of Adi's growth, what I call Adi 1.0, was very much around being investors. So we were minority investors in a variety of companies globally, like cloud computing, autonomous mobility, healthcare, fintech, and so on, right? But then as a minority investor, there's only so much you can control the future of an entity, or for that matter, be able to create impact in society. So this next phase of growth, which we as a group agreed to sometime before Christmas of 2018, was how can we now impact society in a way that will enable us as humans to live more productively, effectively, and impactfully, right? And it all came about that we now need to be in those fundamental pillars of society, like healthcare, education, energy, transportation, agriculture. So these are the 5 things we picked. There was a 6th that we had picked, but we decided we won't play a role at this point in time, which is water, because water is still very much a state subject. So we've kind of stepped back from that. But these other 5, we are starting to play a role, and therefore Adi 2.0 will be one where we have set up and operated global firms in each of these areas. As I like to say, Adi will be the Tatas of the 21st century, and therefore this is our path to doing that.
So you have played a major role in establishing the Journal of International Simulation. So what motivated you to be a part of it, and what are your future plans regarding the same?
Sure. So we had looked at simulation when I was at RELX, which is earlier used to be known as Reed Elsevier, and we had looked at what we could do with simulation. However, when I moved on from RELX and started Adi, We didn't think that we want to do something in the journal world, except that we knew we wanted to bring together thought leaders, clinicians, practitioners, and industry together on a platform that would enable the exchange of ideas, peer review of it, and the actual implementation of it in a group way, right? But I must credit my sister, Dr. Purva Makhani in the UK, who was really the force behind this. I mean, she forced me to look at this as an opportunity to build a journal. She introduced me to Dr. Sandeep, Dr. Murthy, and a few others. There's another very well-known stalwart who edits the journal for us, Dr. Deborah Nestle out of Australia, which again she introduced us to. And I think we all, once we got together, we realized what a fabulous opportunity this would be for us to do something that would energize the world of simulation. So that's how I think. Again, like I said, remember I told you the third thing, you've got to have people who are better than you, right? So have folks like Sandeep and Murthy and Purva who are able to push us in the journey of where this journal needs to be.
So what are the expected new things we can see in regards to the journal?
Oh, phenomenal things. I'd say the amazing thing about the journal was the way this was born during the pandemic. In a way, it was great because we were able to test quite a few things below the radar and not have to take the risk of exposure. For example, if we had had an event around simulation, we may not have got enough attendees. Maybe the 5 of us would have been the only people at it, right? But the pandemic allowed us to experiment with a lot of other things. That was, like I keep saying, you've got to take risks, you've got to fail fast. So we tried a few things and failed quickly. So the direction that we want to go in will be very much around bringing people together physically in a world that allows them to try things virtually, right? So that is something you'll see more of. You'll start to see platforms like webinars that we're going to incubate on this. You're going to start to see innovation centers that we want to work with and see how we can, like this one, for example, it's a great platform. How can we globalize this platform using IJoHS as a vehicle? I think would be tremendous for us to do.
So what advice would you give to the students who are interested to enter the world of entrepreneur? Can you give any advice to the students of GSL institution?
I'd say the most important thing for clinicians or budding clinicians from GSL is don't worry about the business side of being a clinician. That will come, because all of you at some point of time are going to be driving some part of the healthcare value chain as you go forward, right? But I think what's really important is to see, if you think about the founding principles of GSL, I was just blown away by the vision of Dr. Ganni's and how he set it up in a place like Rajamundry, right? It's only come because of the social impact that was at the heart of the family, right? So I would say anything that you all do as tomorrow's budding clinicians and clinical entrepreneurs is think about what social impact can you deliver with healthcare. And if you keep that at the heart of what you do, the rest will just flow.
So ascending to this position of becoming a chairman and you're involved with so many projects. So how does your day-to-day life looks like? And what are the type of things you do to revive yourself from a stress out day?
So my day typically starts, I would say, by 6 in the morning, 6:30, and finishes, I would say, by about 2 a.m. Right? So it's a good, I would say, 20-hour day that I spend. And I would say 20 hours because typically our business spans time zones, right? So you start with Japan and then you finish with San Francisco, right? So that's typical day that I have. I think the trick is to perfect the art of sleeping 4 hours and sleep it really well, because that's what makes my day so much more active, because otherwise I don't get 20 hours, right? If I was sleeping 8 hours. So it's a day that's not just, I would say, structured, but also I leave time for some unstructured things to creep in, because you need to go with the flow sometimes. Not everything will be diarized and itemized for you, right? So it is having that balance of a structure, but knowing that you have 20 hours each day to be able to become effective and deliver impact. That's what I ask myself at the end of each day when we finish.
So I'm very curious to know, what's your vision? What is your strategy when it comes to the word health and wellness? And in our generation, especially we millennials, we suffer a lot with mental health problems. So how do you see that? What are the new changes that you can think of, sir?
Yeah. So I think there are probably 4 things that will become central to the way healthcare is delivered over the next 100 years. I say 100 years because, you know, these new businesses we've now set up as a part of Adi 2.0, we did not start them with a 5-year plan. We've started them with a 100-year plan, because many of these to really change is going to take us that amount of time, right? So if I think about the way healthcare is going to evolve over the next 100 years, one of the first things that we're going to see is the importance of the mind, because we all know that the brain is the least understood part of the physiology. There's going to be a lot more done there around the brain and the mind and how it affects the consciousness, so that we're able to lead a more fulsome life. So therefore we said, let's invest in that. We want to be at the forefront of it, because today's brain was yesterday's body in terms of the advancement of science, right? And therefore that's very important for us. The second big thing that we're going to see is the role of technology. Whether it is robots, whether it is virtual theaters, whether it is neural networks driving the way thought can happen around clinical practices. All of that is going to be driven by technology. So to be at the forefront of technology is a very important part for us, and that's the next big bet we are making within health and wellness. The third is, we believe that the world is now going to shift more towards governments taking more control over the way healthcare is delivered. So in other words, it's going to be more public healthcare systems. But the world has become more complex. There are more people and there's less money. So governments are going to need private operators. So we're going to see more public-private partnerships, wherein you're going to see healthcare being delivered by public enterprises, but with private enterprises' role. So this whole public-private sector role to deliver public healthcare, I think, is going to become very important, and we want to play a role in that.
So I'm very curious to know, after talking with you, your vision is so enlightening. It is something that we all are going to be a part of it. So how do you mentally prepare yourself to stay on long-term goals, sir?
Great question, actually. So the key to think about when you're planning anything for the long term is to break your long term into mini short terms, but never lose sight of the long term, right? So conventional thought or logic is that you start to do short term and then you slowly build the long term. The way I look at it is the opposite. You first think of long term. Where do you want to be in the next 20 years, let's say, right? So when I was, I think about 18, I prepared my first 20-year plan. And believe it or not, I made every one of those, right? So when I turned 40, I then put my next 20-year plan. And I'm almost there, right? And I'm sure when I turn 60, I'll put my next 20-year plan. I don't know if I'll do it at 80, but who knows? I mean, with healthcare the way it is, I might have to do another 20-year plan at 80. But that's the key, to have these long-term vision with a plan, and then work backwards from there to say, right, what do I need to have to make that happen? And then you start to work on it.
So thank you so much for sharing your journey and the advice. It's truly helpful and it is truly inspiring. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.